If someone offered you 50 more years of life, would you take them? Most of us would answer yes. But what if those years had to come from someone else? Somewhere, another person would live 50 years less, so you could live 50 years more. In today's story, that isn't a thought experiment. It's just another business transaction. Nobody celebrated birthdays anymore. People celebrated purchases. 10 years, 5 years, sometimes only 6 months. The richer you were, the longer you lived. That wasn't a metaphor. It was simply how the world worked now. Every citizen wore a small silver circle just below the left wrist. Inside it was a number, not money, not age, remaining years. When a child was born, the government granted every citizen 100 years, not 98, not 102, exactly 100. The number began counting down with the first breath. Scientists called it chronological reserve. Everyone else simply called it time. When the number reached zero, life ended. No disease, no warning, no pain. The body simply stopped, as if some invisible agreement had expired. For almost a century, people accepted it as nature. Then everything changed. Professor Elena Kovacs did something no one believed was possible. She transferred 1 year from one human being to another. Not theoretically, not in a laboratory. She actually did it. The donor lived 1 year less. The receiver lived 1 year more. The transfer worked perfectly. Humanity celebrated. The newspapers called it the greatest medical discovery in history. Governments called it progress. Markets called it opportunity. Within 3 years, time had become the most valuable commodity on earth. Banks no longer stored only money. They stored years. Insurance companies offered time plans. Employers paid bonuses in months. Athletes signed contracts worth decades. Celebrities lived almost indefinitely. The poor sold tomorrow to survive today. At first, people were horrified. Then they adjusted. Humans always do. Children no longer asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" They asked, "How many years do you have?" The answer determined schools, friendships, marriage, business, politics, everything. Someone with 300 years remaining was considered trustworthy. Someone with 8 years left became almost invisible. People said it wasn't discrimination. They said it was practical. Why invest in someone who wouldn't be around? Hospitals quietly prioritized patients with longer reserves. Universities preferred applicants expected to contribute for centuries. Banks refused long-term loans to people with less than 20 years remaining. Nobody wrote these rules down. They didn't need to. The numbers spoke loudly enough. Adrian Vale owned 417 years. He was 58 years old. Officially, biologically, he looked 35. His company, Vale Chronos, owned the largest time exchange in Europe. Every morning, millions of years passed through his servers. Somebody in Tokyo sold 3 months to pay rent. A surgeon in Toronto earned 12 years after a successful operation. A billionaire in Dubai purchased another decade before breakfast. Adrian watched the numbers move across giant screens with quiet satisfaction. He told himself he wasn't exploiting anyone. He was providing opportunity. Every transaction was voluntary. If someone sold 5 years so their daughter could attend university, was that exploitation or freedom? He preferred the second word. Freedom sounded cleaner. His assistant entered the office carrying a glass tablet. "Good morning. Anything urgent?" "Your quarterly report." She handed him the display. "Net profit. Excellent market expansion. Excellent personal reserve. 417.3 years. Excellent. Your medical scan is also ready." He barely glanced at it. Perfect health. Expected biological age after treatment. 34. Heart. Excellent. Brain. Excellent. Bones. Excellent. He smiled. He had built exactly the life he wanted. Time, control, security. Nothing frightened him anymore. Or so he believed. That evening his driver took him home through the older district of the city. Traffic slowed. Construction. Adrian looked out the window impatiently. An old public square had been converted into a weekly time market. People stood beneath white tents waiting to negotiate pieces of their lives. Some sold months, some bought weeks. Digital signs displayed current rates. 1 year, current market value, 2.4 million credits. A young father argued desperately with a broker. I only need 4 months. I'm sorry. My son needs surgery. The market price is the market price. I'll work weekends. The market doesn't buy promises. Adrian looked away. He had seen scenes like this thousands of times. One transaction among millions. Necessary. Efficient. Progress always looked cruel to someone. His grandmother used to say that. The car moved again. As they turned the corner, Adrian noticed an old man sitting alone beside the fountain. No advertisements, no broker, no customers, just an old wooden table. A handwritten sign rested against it. Not selling time, sharing it. People walked past without slowing. One teenager laughed. An office worker shook his head. The old man simply smiled at everyone. Adrian frowned. What is he doing? His driver glanced toward the square. Oh, do you know him? They call him the hour keeper. What does he sell? Nothing. Then why is he there? The driver shrugged. He listens. Adrian almost laughed. People stand in line, sometimes, for conversation, so they say. Adrian leaned back in his seat. Ridiculous. In a city where 1 hour of executive consultation cost more than most families earned in a year, an old man was giving away his time for free. As the car disappeared into evening traffic, the hour-keeper looked up. For a brief second, their eyes met. The old man smiled, not the smile of someone impressed by wealth, nor the smile of someone asking for help. It was the smile of someone who had already recognized something Adrian himself could not yet see. Adrian looked away first. He did not know it. But after spending 40 years buying time, he had just met the first person who no longer measured life by how much remained, and that meeting would cost him far more than all the years he had ever purchased. Adrian did not think about the hour-keeper again. At least, that is what he told himself. But the next morning, during a board meeting, while his chief strategist explained expansion into South America, Adrian found himself staring at the glass wall behind her. Beyond it, the city shone with clean towers and silent roads. 417 years. The number rested beneath his wrist like a private kingdom. He touched the silver circle, a habit, almost a prayer. His strategist stopped speaking. Mr. Vale? Adrian looked up. Yes? Should we move forward with the pension conversion proposal? He had approved it weeks ago. Millions of retired workers would be offered the chance to sell their final 10 years in exchange for immediate comfort, better housing, medical care, debt cancellation. The official slogan was already prepared. Live well now. Adrian nodded. Proceed. The room relaxed. People wrote things down. No one asked whether the final 10 years of a poor person's life were truly theirs to sell, when hunger stood beside them with an open hand. That was the genius of the time exchange. It did not force anyone. It only arranged desperation into neat contracts. After the meeting, Adrian's daughter called. Her face appeared on the wall screen. Sophia was 27, though she looked older in the way unhappy young people often do. Not aged, burdened. Father. Sophia, you missed dinner again. I had an emergency meeting. You always do. I told your mother. You told her assistant. Adrian removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. I'll make it up to you. She smiled without warmth. With what? Another decade? He stiffened. For her 21st birthday, he had gifted her 50 years. Most parents cried, giving jewelry, cars, houses. Adrian had given life itself. She had looked at the transfer certificate as if it were a bill. I gave you security, he said. You gave me what you know how to give. That sounds like an accusation. It is. He leaned back. What do you want from me, Sophia? For once, I want you to answer without buying time to think. The sentence irritated him because it landed cleanly. Before he could answer, she looked away. Mother is getting treatment again. Adrian sat up. What treatment? She didn't tell you? I've been traveling. You've been in the city. That is not the same thing as available. Sophia closed her eyes. She sold 20 years. Adrian went still. That's impossible. It happened last week. Why? To fund the foundation. Which foundation? The one for end-of-life care. He almost laughed from shock. She sold 20 years to help people with no years left. Yes, that is irrational. She said you would say that. Adrian stood. I'm coming home. Are you? The call ended. His wife Clara had never liked the time exchange. In the early years, she had attended ceremonies, smiled beside him, worn the silver jewelry that marked the families of founders. But as the company grew, she withdrew, not dramatically. Clara never performed emotion. She simply turned her attention elsewhere. Hospices, public clinics, children whose parents had sold years to survive. Old people abandoned because their reserves were too low to be considered useful. Adrian called it guilt work. She called it seeing. Their home stood above the city in a private district where every tree had been imported, and every silence was maintained by paid staff. Clara was in the garden when he arrived. She was pruning roses. Her silver wrist circle showed 62.4 years. He noticed immediately. Last month it had been 82.4. The missing 20 years looked to him like blood. You sold time, he said. She did not turn around. Hello, Adrian. Why? To build something. You could have asked me for money. I did not need money. You gave away years. I used them. He stepped closer. You are 61 years old. Officially. You now have less than Sophia. I should hope so. She is our daughter. This is not a joke. No, Clara said, clipping a dead branch. It is not. He tried to control his voice. You cannot reverse a voluntary transfer after 48 hours. I know. I could have arranged a private extension. I know. Then why would you do this? Finally, she turned. Her face was calm. This angered him more than grief would have. Because I have watched people die alone, while you sold immortality to men who already had too much life and nothing to live for. Adrian stared at her. That is cruel. It took me years to make it that mild. He looked at the roses because he could not look at her. I built this for us. No, she said. You built it because you were afraid. Afraid? Yes. He laughed once, a sharp sound. I owned 400 years. I know. That is the part that frightens me. For a moment only the garden fountain spoke. Clara placed the shears on the table. When Sophia was small, she once asked why you never came to the beach with us. I had work. I told her you were building the future. That was true. She asked whether we would live in it with you. Adrian said nothing. Clara's voice softened. You have spent decades buying time, but you keep postponing life. He looked at his wrist. 417.3. The number had always comforted him. Now, for the first time, it seemed strangely silent. That night, Adrian could not sleep. He walked through the house. Every room was perfect, temperature controlled, quiet, expensive, empty. In the study, old photographs glowed in a rotating frame. Sophia at 5, holding a paper crown. Clara laughing in rain. Adrian younger, standing before the first Vale Kronos building, his eyes bright with conquest. A photo of his mother appeared. He reached out and stopped the frame. She had died before transfers became legal. Lung failure. Age 72. He had been 31. At her bedside, she had held his hand with surprising strength. "Do not become a man who survives everything except his own life," she had said. He had thought grief made people poetic. Now he wondered whether dying people simply stopped wasting words. The next morning, Adrian went to the old district. He told his driver not to follow. The time market was already crowded. A woman with gray hair sold 2 years to pay off her grandson's debt. A student sold 9 months for university fees. An actor bought 6 weeks before an audition season. A politician's agent purchased 14 years anonymously. Every transaction entered the system Adrian owned. Every fear became data. The hourkeeper sat by the fountain again. Same wooden table, same handwritten sign, not selling time, sharing it. Adrian stood before him. The old man looked up. "You came back." "I was passing through." "No," said the old man. "You were avoiding somewhere else." Adrian disliked him immediately. "What do people come to you for?" "Usually, what they cannot buy." "That means nothing." "To those who can buy almost everything, it often does." Adrian looked at the sign. "You share time?" "Yes." "How?" "I sit with them." "That is all?" "Sometimes that is more than they have received in years." Adrian glanced at the old man's wrist. 1.8 years, less than 2 years remaining. "You are almost out." The hourkeeper followed his gaze. "Yes." "Why not buy more?" "With what?" Adrian opened his mouth, then stopped. The old man smiled. "Careful. Rich men often mistake their answer for wisdom." "I could give you 10 years." "I know." "You would refuse?" "Yes." "That is absurd." "Perhaps." "Do you want to die?" "No." "Then why refuse?" The old man leaned back. "Because I have no wish to extend a life I am not willing to inhabit." The sentence annoyed Adrian because it sounded rehearsed. Beautiful words do not change biology. "No, but neither do extra years change fear." Adrian placed both hands on the table. "I am not afraid." The hourkeeper looked at him for a long moment. Then he said gently, "Men who are not afraid do not spend their lives building walls against time." Adrian stepped back. People moved around them. The market buzzed. Numbers changed. Contracts closed. Somewhere a child laughed. The hourkeeper reached into his coat and took out a small folded paper. "Read this." "What is it?" "Something older than both of us." Adrian did not take it. "I don't need spiritual comfort." "Good. This is not comfort." After a moment, Adrian accepted the paper. On it was written, "The pleasant and the truly good approach a person. The wise examine both and choose the truly good. The foolish, for the sake of comfort, choose the pleasant." Adrian read it twice. "What is this?" "A verse my teacher gave me when I was young." "From where?" "An old Indian text." "You think this applies to me?" "I think it applies to everyone. You are not special enough to escape it." Adrian almost smiled despite himself. The hourkeeper pointed at the time market. "This city sells the pleasant and calls it freedom. And what do you call the truly good?" The old man looked toward a line of people waiting near a transfer booth. "To stop trading life for the fear of losing it." Adrian folded the paper. "You judge what you don't understand." "Of course," said the hourkeeper. "So do you." Adrian should have left. Instead, he sat. Only for 5 minutes. That is what he told himself. A woman came first. She was a nurse with 7.2 years remaining. She sat opposite the hourkeeper and began to cry before speaking. Her daughter wanted her to sell 2 years to help with a mortgage. "I want to help," she said, "but I'm tired of disappearing for other people." The hourkeeper did not advise her. He did not quote anything. He simply listened until her breathing slowed. Then a boy came. no older than 16. He had sold 3 years secretly to buy entry into a racing league. Now his mother had found out. She says, "I stole from my own future," he said. The hourkeeper asked, "Did you?" The boy looked angry, then uncertain, then young. One after another, people came. A businessman who had bought 50 years but could not forgive his brother. A singer with 6 months left who wanted someone to hear her final song. An old woman who had more years than her children because they had sold them to keep her alive. "I am becoming a monument to their sacrifice," she whispered. "I do not know how to bear it." Adrian stayed for 3 hours, then 4. No transaction occurred, no profit was made, no efficiency improved. Yet as he watched, he saw something his company had never measured. A minute could be empty, or it could hold a human being together. A year could be wasted, or 1 hour could become enough to forgive someone. Time was not life. Time was only the room where life might happen. When Adrian finally stood, the hourkeeper looked amused. "You passed through very slowly." Adrian ignored this. "What is your real name?" "Samuel." "Why do you do this, Samuel?" The old man began folding his sign. "Because when my wife was dying, I kept trying to buy her years." "Could you?" "For a while." "What happened?" Samuel looked across the square. "I added time to her life, but I was too afraid to sit inside it with her." He placed the sign under his arm. "By the time I stopped bargaining, she had only 3 days left. Those 3 days were the first time I truly lived with her in years." Adrian said nothing. Samuel nodded toward the folded verse in Adrian's hand. "The pleasant offers extension. The truly good asks for presence." Then he walked away. Adrian returned home long after dark. For the first time in years, he entered the garden without looking at messages. Clara was there, sitting beneath the rose trellis. She looked surprised. "Are you lost?" "Probably." She almost smiled. He sat beside her. For a long time they said nothing. The silence felt awkward, then painful, then slowly honest. Finally Adrian said, "Tell me about the foundation." Clara looked at him carefully as though deciding whether this was another negotiation. "It is a hospice." "I know." "No, you don't." She looked toward the dark garden. "It is a place where people are not treated according to how many years they have left." Adrian swallowed. "And what are they treated according to?" She turned back to him. "As if they are still here." The next morning, Adrian cancelled 3 meetings. His assistant thought he was ill. His board thought there was a crisis. His daughter did not answer his first call, or the second. On the third, she appeared. "What happened?" "I want to have lunch." "With whom?" "With you." She stared. "Why?" "Because I don't remember the last time we did." "That never bothered you before." "It bothers me now." Sophia studied him. "Are you dying?" "No." "Then why are you acting human?" The sentence hurt. Good, he thought. Some pain meant the body was still alive. "I can come to your office," he said. "No." "Dinner then?" "No." He nodded. "I understand." "No, you don't," she said. "But you can meet me Saturday at the public gardens, 11 o'clock. If you send anyone else, I leave. I'll be there. If you check messages while I'm speaking, I leave. I won't. If you offer me more years, I leave." Adrian looked at his wrist. 417.3. Then he looked back at his daughter. "I won't." The call ended. For the first time in decades, Adrian found himself waiting for a day. Not because it contained a deal, a meeting, or a purchase, but because someone he loved had agreed to give him 2 hours. And unlike every year he owned, those 2 hours could still be lost. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. The city had spent decades learning how to manufacture comfort. The trees in the public gardens were monitored by tiny sensors buried beneath their roots. If the soil became too dry, water flowed automatically. If a branch weakened, Drones trimmed it before it could fall. Even autumn had become orderly. Leaves were collected every evening before they could cover the paths. Adrian arrived 20 minutes early. He had never waited for anyone in his adult life. People waited for him. That was how power worked. Now he sat alone on a wooden bench, overlooking a pond. Families wandered past. Children chased pigeons. An elderly couple played chess without speaking. Nobody seemed interested in the years beneath anyone else's wrist. For reasons Adrian couldn't explain, this tiny corner of the city felt like another country. At exactly 11, Sophia appeared. No assistants, no security. She carried 2 paper cups of coffee. She handed one to him without smiling. I wasn't sure whether you'd come. I almost didn't. I know. They walked slowly beside the water. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Adrian said, "When you were little, we came here once." Sophia laughed softly. "No, we didn't. You promised we would." The words landed harder than any accusation. "You were 8, she continued. "You said we'd feed the ducks after your meeting. I remember." "No." She shook her head. "You remember the meeting. I waited here with Mom for 3 hours. You called and said you'd come tomorrow." She looked at the pond. Tomorrow became 17 years. Adrian stopped walking. "I didn't know." "I know." She looked at him for the first time. "That's the problem." They continued in silence. Near the center of the park stood a large clock made entirely of flowers. It had no numbers, only moving hands. Children liked running around it because every season changed its colors. Sophia sat on the low stone wall surrounding it. "When I was 15, she said, I hated you." Adrian nodded. "I probably deserved that. When I was 20, I understood why you worked." He looked relieved. She noticed. "Don't." "What?" "I'm not finished." She stared at the flower clock. "Now I'm 27. I don't hate you. I pity you." He looked away. "That's worse." "I know." A little girl ran between them, chasing a red balloon. Her father followed, laughing so hard he almost dropped the ice cream he was carrying. The balloon escaped. All three looked upward. For almost a minute, they simply watched it disappear into the blue sky. The little girl clapped. "Look, it's going to the moon." Her father laughed. "No, but maybe someone else will find it." She seemed satisfied. They walked away. Sophia smiled. "You see?" "What?" "She lost something." "Yes." And she didn't think her life ended. Adrian watched the empty sky. He thought about every acquisition he'd ever made, every extension, every investment, every negotiation. Somewhere along the way, he'd begun believing that losing anything was unacceptable, not painful, impossible. By afternoon, they had walked almost 6 kilometers. Not once had Adrian checked his wrist. Not once had he answered a message. When they reached the park entrance, Sophia hugged him, briefly, awkwardly. Then she whispered, "Please don't buy another 100 years before you learn how to spend one afternoon." She left before he could answer. Monday morning, Vale Chronos headquarters. The quarterly expansion meeting began precisely at 8. 40 executives filled the room. Charts appeared, forecasts, predictions, profit curves. Then Adrian interrupted. "I have a proposal." Everyone looked up. "We're suspending all advertising that encourages people to sell life under financial pressure." Silence. His chief financial officer blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me. Our largest campaign ends today." The legal director spoke carefully. "Shareholders will object. They'll survive." The room exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever heard Adrian speak like this. The CFO tried again. "We're talking about nearly 12% of annual revenue." Adrian nodded. "I know. Why?" He thought about Samuel, about Clara, about Sophia, about the father chasing the red balloon with his daughter. Finally, he answered, because profit and permission are not the same thing. Nobody wrote that sentence down. They were too busy wondering whether their CEO had lost his mind. News spread quickly. Financial channels called it irrational. Investors called it dangerous. Social media called it weakness. Within 48 hours, Vale Chronos stock had fallen 18%. Board members demanded an emergency vote. One headline read, "Has the man who bought time lost his own?" Adrian read every article, then closed the screen. For the first time in 30 years, he went home before sunset. The hospice stood beside the sea. Clara had invited him many times. He had never gone. Now he entered quietly. No marble, no technology, no expensive architecture, just sunlight, open windows, the smell of soup, a volunteer reading poetry to an old fisherman, a nurse laughing with a woman who had only weeks remaining. Nobody hurried, nobody negotiated, nobody checked wrist circles. Adrian noticed something almost frightening. People whose numbers were nearly zero laughed more than many clients who owned 300 years. A little boy approached him. "Are you visiting someone?" "No." "Oh." The boy thought for a moment. "Then someone probably needs visiting." He took Adrian's hand before he could refuse. The child led him into room 7. An elderly pianist lay in bed. Her reserve read 0.03 years, about 11 days. She smiled. "I've been expecting you." Adrian frowned. "We've met?" "No." "Then, the boy brings strangers." She laughed. "It keeps life interesting." Adrian pulled up a chair. "What should I say?" She shrugged. "Anything honest." He realized how difficult that was. After several awkward moments, he asked, "Were you afraid of dying?" "Yes." She considered it. "I was." "What changed?" "I got busy." "Busy?" "Loving people." She smiled gently. "Fear takes up a lot of space. So does love. There's only room for one at a time." He thought about that for a long while. Finally, he asked, "If someone offered you another 50 years?" She interrupted him. "I'd ask for another afternoon." He looked surprised. "Why?" "Because 50 years without presence becomes another way to postpone living." She reached toward the small table beside her bed. On it stood an old metronome, wooden, worn smooth by decades of use. She wound it. Tick, tick, tick. "When I was young," she said, "I thought music came from the notes. Tick, tick, tick. Then I became older. Tick, tick, tick. And discovered it comes from the silence between them." She looked directly into Adrian's eyes. "Life is the same." The metronome continued. Tick, tick, tick. For reasons Adrian couldn't explain, he began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Like a dam developing its first crack after decades of holding back a river. He wasn't crying because the woman was dying. He was crying because for the first time, he understood that he had spent 40 years extending the notes, while completely forgetting the music. When he left the hospice that evening, the sea was calm. He stood watching the horizon until the sun disappeared. Then, almost without thinking, he removed his expensive watch. Not the silver wrist circle that could not be removed. The watch. A gift to himself after buying his first extra century. He looked at it for a long moment, then placed it on a nearby bench. Someone else would find it. Or not. For the first time in years, it didn't matter. As he walked toward the city, he noticed children building sandcastles. One wave erased an entire wall. None of them complained. They simply laughed and started building again. Adrian stopped, watched, and smiled. For the first time in a very long time, he wasn't thinking about how much time remained. He was simply inside. One beautiful evening. He had owned 400 years for a long time. But perhaps, just perhaps, this was the first day he had actually lived. The morning after his visit to the hospice, Adrian did something no one at Vale Kronos expected. He arrived before everyone else, not because there was more work to do, because there was something he had avoided for nearly 40 years. He opened the company archives, not the financial records, the human records. Every transfer ever made was stored there, every year bought, every month sold, every desperate signature, every celebration, every regret. He spent hours reading. A young violinist had sold 8 years to pay for her mother's treatment. The treatment failed. A brilliant engineer had purchased 60 extra years. He died 2 months later in an accident that no amount of purchase time could prevent. A father sold 15 years so his daughter could become a doctor. She spent the rest of her life trying to earn back the years he had given away. Thousands, then tens of thousands. The database did not contain numbers anymore. It contained stories. And for the first time, Adrian realized something terrifying. His company had never traded time. It had traded fear. Fear of illness, fear of poverty, fear of death, fear of missing out, fear of not having enough. Every contract began with the same invisible sentence. Maybe then, I'll finally be safe. By noon, he called an emergency board meeting. The directors arrived expecting another financial announcement. Instead, Adrian stood without slides, graphs, or projections. I've spent 40 years believing our business existed to extend life. He paused. I was wrong. People shifted uneasily. Our business has been extending fear. Silence. One director finally spoke. With respect, fear is what created the market. I know. And without the market, there will still be death. The legal director folded his hands. Where exactly is this leading? Adrian took a deep breath. We are changing the company. The room became still. No person under financial hardship will be allowed to sell years. Several people began speaking at once. He raised his hand. We will fund palliative care. More disbelief. We will fund family caregivers. A few exchanged confused looks. We will create grants so people don't have to sell life just to survive. The chief financial officer looked almost angry. This will cost billions. Adrian nodded. Yes. Our competitors will destroy us. Perhaps. Shareholders will sue. They might. So why are we doing this? Adrian looked around the table. Because this time he wanted them to hear the truth, not the strategy. Because I finally understand the difference between extending a life, he stopped, and helping someone live. No one applauded. Real change rarely begins with applause. It begins with discomfort. Within weeks, the financial press declared Adrian unstable. Analysts predicted bankruptcy. Competitors mocked the reforms. One television commentator laughed on air. The richest man in history suddenly discovered philosophy. Stock prices continued to fall. Journalists camped outside his home. Some called him a visionary. Most called him a fool. Strangely, he slept better than he had in decades. Months later, Samuel, the hour keeper, stopped coming to the square. People noticed. A few asked where he had gone. Most simply found someone else to hurry past. Adrian visited the small apartment listed in public records. A neighbor answered the door. You just missed him. Where is he? The hospice. Adrian smiled sadly. Of course. He found Samuel sitting beside the same pianist he had met weeks earlier. The room was quiet. The metronome no longer ticked. Samuel looked thinner. His wrist now showed only a few weeks. You came. I said I would. No. Samuel laughed softly. You said nothing. Adrian pulled up a chair. For several minutes, they simply watched the afternoon light move slowly across the floor. Finally, Adrian asked, Were you always this calm? Samuel laughed. Oh no. I spent half my life terrified. What changed? My wife. The one you told me about. Samuel nodded. When she died, I discovered something embarrassing. What? I had spent years trying to save her future. He looked out the window, and almost none of her present. Adrian lowered his eyes. I know that feeling. Samuel smiled. I thought you might. After another long silence, Samuel asked, Do you remember the verse I gave you? Adrian reached into his wallet. The folded paper was still there, worn now, soft at the edges. I've carried it every day. Good. Why? Because wisdom shouldn't live in books. It should live in pockets. They both laughed. Then Samuel became serious. Read it again. Adrian unfolded the paper. Slowly. The pleasant and the truly good approach every person. He continued until the final line. When he finished, Samuel asked, What do you think it means now? Adrian looked around the room. The nurse adjusting a blanket. The volunteer reading quietly in the hallway. The pianist sleeping peacefully. He smiled. I used to think the pleasant meant comfort. And now, I think it means postponement. Samuel closed his eyes. Better. And the truly good? Adrian looked toward the open window where children were laughing somewhere outside. It asks us to be fully present before life disappears. Samuel nodded once. You've been listening. 3 days later, Samuel died. There was no monument, no public holiday, no state funeral. Only a small wooden table was placed beside the fountain where he had spent so many mornings. On it, someone left a handwritten sign. Not selling time, sharing it. No one knew who wrote it. People began sitting there. At first only one or two, then more. A retired teacher, a widower, a university student, a nurse, a mechanic. Nobody was paid. Nobody became famous. They simply listened. The city slowly changed. Not dramatically. Markets still existed. People still bought years. People still sold them. Fear does not disappear because one person wakes up. But another possibility had entered the world. Years later, Adrian's reserve had fallen from 417 to 380. People assumed he had sold them. He hadn't. He had simply stopped buying. When journalists asked why, he always answered the same way. I finally realized I wasn't running out of years. He would smile. I was running out of mornings I was actually awake for. On his 70th birthday, Sophia gave him a small wooden frame. Inside it was an old photograph. The three of them. At the beach. Not from childhood. From 6 months earlier. No assistants. No meetings. No devices. Just sand. Wind. And laughter. Ancient wisdom applied. This story isn't really about buying more years. It is about a much older question. What are we really afraid of? Most people say they fear death. But if we look carefully, that isn't always true. Many people fear something else. They fear never really living. Ancient India explored this question with extraordinary depth. In one of its oldest philosophical texts, the Katha Upanishad, it begins with a remarkable conversation between a young seeker named Nachiketa and Yam, the Lord of Death. The death offers the boy everything a human being could desire: long life, wealth, power, pleasure, comfort, security, everything. Nachiketa refuses, not because these things are evil, but because they cannot answer the deepest question. They all end, sooner or later. Yam then introduces one of the most profound ideas in Indian philosophy. Every human being repeatedly faces two paths. One is pleasant, the other is the truly good. The pleasant gives immediate satisfaction. The truly good often requires wisdom, patience, and courage. The pleasant is not always wrong, but when we mistake it for lasting fulfillment, we become trapped. And this is exactly what happened to Adrian. Buying more years was not the problem. His attachment to those years was he believed more time would finally make him safe. But safety kept moving further away. This pattern appears everywhere today. I'll be happy when I earn more. I'll be relaxed after this project. I'll spend time with my family next year. I'll start living after I retire. The life becomes something scheduled for later. The future quietly steals the present. The Bhagavad Gita offers a complementary insight. It teaches that while we should act with dedication, we cannot build our peace on controlling every outcome. Death, change, uncertainty, and life itself remain outside our command. That realization is not meant to make us passive. It is meant to make us fully present. Adrian's transformation did not begin when he rejected technology. It began when he understood the difference between owning more time and living more deeply within the time already given. This is why the story ends with ordinary moments: a walk, a photograph, a children laughing, a bicycle, nothing extraordinary. Because wisdom often returns us to the ordinary with new eyes. The Katha Upanishad does not ask us to stop living. It asks us to stop postponing life. One day every number reaches zero, and that has always been true. The deeper question has never been, how many years do I have? The deeper question is, what am I doing with the morning I woke up to today? That is the only moment life has been able to enter.